Walt, I'm really excited about this. It is an honor, as a matter of fact, to introduce Walt tonight. I will say, I'll let him do most of the talking, but I will say, just from my perspective, I have yet to ever see a campaign or a candidate in this state for governor who has ever made me actually feel like they care about my future, about the things that matter most to me, about the issues that affect me, especially as young professionals. It means a lot to us. Our future in this state, I feel like, is something that can be uncertain sometimes. So, without further ado, I want to introduce you guys to Mayor Walt Maddox, who's running for governor, and please give him a huge, huge round of applause.
Wow, this as a candidate who we have been on the road for over a year now. We've got 71 days to election day, and to see this excitement, this energy, this enthusiasm tells me all I need to know. Get ready to believe we're going to win on November 6th. So let's do it. Electing the right governor is important to the history of this state. But as Matthew pointed out, and by the way, let's give Matthew a round of applause. I know this was a labor of love for him and others in this room, so thank you very much. But as much as a governor can do and impact the future of this state, a governor has to have a legislature, a House and a Senate that's going to work with them to make certain we pass the policies necessary to make this century the Alabama century. And so I know Cal Pierce, I know Cal is running. Cal, I know we introduced you earlier, but raise your hand again. Give Cal a round of applause. Jim Williams, where's Jim? I know he's running for Senate. There he is back there. Pamela Howard right here in front of me. And then we got, and this is what I find exciting, running for school board. It often gets overlooked. So Brooke, oh, there you are, right there. These candidates have, and again, if you've never put your name on the ballot, it's an extraordinary thing to do. And it's an extraordinary risk and an act of faith. And so to all the candidates that are running, thank you for doing so. We know it's not easy, but you're going to be a difference maker, because I certainly believe that right here, right now in Alabama, the momentum is with us like it's never been with us before. And I've traveled all across Alabama. I've been to Sand Mountain, to the Wiregrass, from the Black Belt to the Gulf Coast. I've been to cities whose buildings reach towards the sky, and I've been to towns that really are not much more than a gas station and a post office. And I've talked to people that are new to Alabama, and I've talked to people who have been here for generations. And let me tell you something about Alabamians. We care about people. We believe the best in people. We're generous people, and we're people of deep convictions. And what I've also discovered in Alabamians, from north to south, is they want a governor who believes that we should put ideas over ideologies, that believes we should put results over rhetoric, and believes absolutely it's time to put people ahead of politics. To all of you here tonight, I believe I am that leader for these. We call this the New Covenant, and the reason why we do is simply this. I am 45 years old. In my entire life, we have been 46, 47, 48, 49, and 50 in everything that matters. In everything that matters. And when we look and we contrast the difference between the candidates in this race, I don't think the contrast could be any clearer. That there is a candidate that talks about the future, about the opportunities that are on the horizon, not only for us, but for a new generation of Alabama leaders. And there's a candidate that believes in dividing us. We believe that is the only way to lead, is to create obstacles in front of each and every one of us. I don't buy into that leadership. I've always felt in my 13 years with the city of Tuscaloosa that we were always stronger when we were working together. And together as Alabamians, we are going to truly make this century the Alabama century. Because together, we are going to stamp out corruption in Montgomery that's been going on for way too long. I promise that we are going to be the most transparent and the most accountable in the history of the state of Alabama. Together, We're going to eliminate the obstacles to the ballot box. We're going to begin to encourage early voting in this state. And for those who oppose it, you can't call yourself a patriot if you're scared of democracy. I say this as a mayor, and I say this as a candidate for governor, and most importantly, I say this as a parent. As your governor, we are going to make our schools safer. We're going to harden our facilities. We're going to put certified, trained law enforcement officers in each one of our schools. And let me be absolutely clear for this. I don't support antics that will no way make our children safer. That's not going to make Taylor, my daughter, and Eli, my son's school, safer. But the other thing that I do support is taking every responsible initiative necessary to make certain that none of our children ever fear going to school. We need to applaud on that, Alabama. Together, I want to protect Alabama's natural resources. These have been the sacred grounds for those who hunt, fish, camp, and hike. Let me tell you the other thing that I want to do as your governor. I want to clean up the environmental injustices that we've seen in 8 Mile, Uniontown, North Birmingham, and too many other places across Alabama. And together, and all of us together, let's expand Medicaid to make certain that we save our lives and that we finally take care of those with mental health needs. And together, let's pass the Alabama Education Lottery so we can have college scholarships. But I am tired of educating the children in Georgia and Florida and Tennessee. You know, I've been asked, why are you so passionate about the lottery program, in particular scholarships for our children? And I'm not just talking about 4-year, 2-year workforce development. When I was fortunate enough to get a chance to go to UAB, my parents took the financial brunt of that. My sister was a senior at the University of Alabama. I was a freshman at UAB. And they had to sell the home that we grew up in just to keep both my sister and myself in college. My parents made that sacrifice for me, which is one of the reasons why I'm standing here before you as a candidate for governor of the state of Alabama. As your governor, I promise you that no parents will ever have to sell their home, sell their car, or do anything that's going to put them in a financial bind to send their children to college. This is why this election is important, and together, we are going to win on November 6th. Let me talk briefly about a couple of other things, and then I would love to answer your questions. I believe that time has never been better in our state's history for real leadership. Alabama's in crisis, whether it's education, healthcare, mental health, infrastructure, corrections. There's not one function of state government that's not in crisis. Now, some of you may have heard recently that I proposed to Governor Ivey that we have a series of debates. Now, surprisingly, Governor Ivey hasn't responded to this. So let me be clear. Governor Ivey doesn't owe me a debate. She doesn't. But she owes the people of Alabama one. Yes. She owes the people who are in the 6 rural counties today that lost their hospitals because we didn't expand Medicaid. She owes them a debate. She owes communities like Haleyville, Fayette, and Wilcox County who have had to raise their taxes just to keep their hospitals open. She owes them a debate. She owes the families of those who are in mental health distress, who need treatment centers but cannot find it because she's been part of the mass closing of mental health institutions across Alabama. She owes them a debate. She owes all of us a debate for 20% of Alabama's bridges being functionally obsolete. Today, 1 million Alabamians, including tens of thousands of school children, went over those bridges today. She owes them a debate. She owes all of us a debate to explain why we should have 750 state troopers, and today we have less than 300 on our highways. Governor Ivey doesn't owe me a debate, but she damn sure owes the people of Alabama. And let me tell you something, mountain oysters and monuments don't cut it. It is time that we expect more out of our elected officials. It is time that we again believe in the promise of Alabama. I truly believe that this is our moment to rise. This is our moment to draw the line in the sand. This is our moment to say that we will no longer, as a people, accept being last in everything that matters. This is our moment. But when moments like this come, it's incumbent on all of us to do something with it. Nobody, Kyle and I, Pam and I, Jim and I, we can't win elections alone. It's going to take all of us standing together, doing what is necessary over the next 71 days to deliver this victory. I'll share a quick football story with you. Some of you may know I played football at UAB, and trust me, I was neither a star or a starter. Okay? Let me make that absolutely clear. I barely, whatever the matrix was for qualifying for the team, I'm certain that I barely made it. But my senior year, we were playing in Jacksonville State at Legion Field. It was pouring down rain. You could barely see a thing. It was in the fourth quarter, and I was in the game, so somebody must have been hurt. And if we stop, and my memory is correct, if we stop Jacksonville State on this fourth down, we win the ball game. So Coach Hilliard, our head coach and defensive coordinator, calls in a play. The linebacker and I decide, well, that play's really not good enough. We need to add this to the play. Well, Wayne and I did that, and unfortunately, J.J. Pruitt, some of you know J.J. Pruitt from Fox 6 in the morning. Well, he ran more than 50 yards for a touchdown. In fact, in my mind's eye, I can still see the back of his jersey running towards south end zone at Legion Field in the pouring down rain. As I run off the sideline, Coach Hilliard's going, "What happened? What happened?" And I'm like, "I don't know what happened." You know? Well, we used to say, the eye in the sky don't lie. And so the next Monday when we came into film study, Coach Hilliard didn't start on the first play of the game. Started on that play. Started on that very play, and he kept muttering back and forth. And I was scared to death, by the way. How can you win if you don't play as a team? How can you win if you don't play as a team? To all of you in this room, young and old, Democrats, Republicans, independents, people of different faiths, different races, this is the moment we play as a team in Alabama. This is where we harness the diversity of ideas and experiences. And we tackle the challenges that are in front of us. This moment deserves more than monuments and mountain oysters. It deserves thoughtful and strategic thought about how we lift everybody in our state. And when it comes to elections, if we play as a team, all of us in this room, and we all do our part, whether it's investing, putting out yard signs, knocking on doors, or all the above, I promise you this, that we will not let you down. That we will win on November 6th. All of us together will win as a team. So, don't stop believing. Victory is on our horizon. So let's go out there and do it together. May God bless each and every one of you. And may God bless the great state of Alabama. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Absolutely. And I'll repeat the question so hopefully most of you can hear it. The question deals with what do we do or how do we protect the teacher's retirement system, and I will add a caveat, the employee's retirement system as well. Well, both of my parents are retired either teacher or state employee. And so I have a vested interest in protecting the retirement systems of Alabama. It's one of the few quality benefits left we have regarding teachers and state employees to come work for the state of Alabama. But here's another reason why Governor Ivey doesn't want to debate. On the horizon for Alabama's future is going to be a massive field for the Department of Corrections. Some of you may know that Judge Myron Thompson right now is reviewing corrections. It's under a court order, and pretty soon will be issuing findings. It is likely those findings are going to cost Alabama tens of millions of dollars annually in operating costs. Now, the governor doesn't want to talk about it because then if she acknowledges that, then she has to acknowledge, well, how do you pay for it? Well, if you're not going to do like we do and go after and tax existing gaming or reach a compact with the Forest Creek Indian or finally authorize sports gambling like they've done in Mississippi, you do not have revenues to pay for it unless you do one of two things. You either go into the Education Trust Fund or you go after the dollars in the retirement systems of Alabama. The governor can escape her responsibility through the legislature, but you cannot escape a federal court order. See, this is why this election is important. This is why that Governor Ivey chooses silence. You know, Dr. King said that your lives begin to end the day you become silent about the things that matter. By the way, the last time in modern history we had an incumbent governor not debate their opponent was in 2014. Robert Bentley did not want to debate the Democratic nominee. Do you remember what happened a few months later? He proposed nearly $1 billion in tax increases and then was embroiled in one of the worst scandals in Alabama's history. Silence is not the friend of any Alabamian, regardless if you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent. That is why I believe the people behind Governor Ivey want her to stay silent. Any other questions that you may have? Yes, sir.
I spoke to you a little about this prior, but I wanted to ask more broadly for the other people in the audience. I go to college out of state, so I'm not back in Anniston often. When I come back, it often feels that there's not like a lot to come back to. And a lot of young people feel the same way, whether they're professionals, college students, whatnot. There are no innovation, no small business, no protections for LGBTQ individuals. And I'm wondering what type of policy ideas you have to make areas like Anniston or Gadsden start to like increase in their economic development, retaining young people, versus just the brain drain that we have in huge numbers now. So you see like big cities like Austin, Texas, and Oregon growing rapidly, versus areas like Brown.
That's a great question. And for those that didn't hear it, I'm just going to oversimplify. It's basically the brain drain that we have in Alabama. And the fact is that too many of Alabama's cities are not growing. And we talked earlier, you were telling me about the Wall Street Journal article recently. They talked about the shrinking metro area that we're in now, one of the fastest growing shrinking metro areas, and not in Alabama, in the nation. Let me tell you what I think we've got to do from an economic standpoint, and it's 3 areas I'm going to hit very quickly, but certainly it's more complicated than that. Number 1, the biggest economic issue facing Alabama is workforce development. And as part of our lottery proposal, we want to expand and enhance apprenticeships in the state at a very rapid level and make it available beginning your high school year. The second caveat to that is, and this is not related to the lottery, is that we want to consolidate the 4 different areas of the state that deal with workforce development under one office. Right now we have a lot of duplication, we have a lot of confusing mandates, and we have no one being held accountable for the lack of workforce development in our state. Right now in Alabama we've got 600,000 people, nearly 1/4 of our workforce is underemployed. We have got to change that dynamic. And if you think I'm wrong, let me give you 2 more stat points that I think highlight the disparity. Alabama is one of 6 states that has less jobs today than we did 10 years ago. 1 of 6. That's shocking. The second thing is we rank 2nd in the nation in the number of people who dropped out of the labor force, who have quit looking for jobs. You know, I hear the governor talk about low unemployment, and certainly that's something to be proud of. However, what you don't hear them talk about is the number of people who've dropped out of the labor force, the number of people who are underemployed. And by the way, Alabama ranks 8th in the nation per capita of people on disability. So we have some major issues that have to be addressed. Second thing that we've got to do is that Alabama has no strategic plan as it relates to knowledge-based and technology-based jobs in the state. That to me is crying out for why we've got to think differently when it comes to areas like Anniston, Gadsden, metro areas. Tuscaloosa. You know, Huntsville's kind of set on its own with Redstone and NASA. But the rest of us are going to have to work very hard. Here's something that I think is in our advantage. Number 1 is higher education. Number 2 is that we've done very good in manufacturing jobs, but we've got to start bringing in the research and development related to it. In Tuscaloosa, for example, we're very proud to have Mercedes. We need to work harder on getting more of the research and development elements out of Stuttgart into Tuscaloosa. And the list goes on and on. So as governor, that's the second thing that we want to do. The third thing is we've got to improve our infrastructure in the state. Roads, bridges, water, sewer, fiber, all those other things. But when I say infrastructure, let me add another caveat, healthcare. If you're in Alex City, Alabama, and your hospital just laid off employees, and the whole future of its healthcare is in jeopardy, it is going to make it difficult to recruit healthcare. If you're in Jacksonville, Alabama, who just lost its hospital, I know this hits home, it makes it very difficult for economic development. The fact that the governor didn't expand Medicaid, and has failed to expand Medicaid, and Friday reinforced the fact that she would not expand Medicaid, will ultimately be the death of rural Alabama. And it ultimately will impact all of us because it's not like people do not get sick anymore. So those are the things I would do as governor to immediately begin addressing those issues. Thank you for your question. Right here, and then we'll go right there.
About 10 years ago, I was at a lecture where someone who had done the research said that in Alabama, the timber industry owns between, I think, I've forgotten the percentage, about 75% of the property, pays between 1 and 2% of the property tax. You step over the line into Georgia, they pay 16 times the property tax for the timber industry that we do. What could you do about that? Because I think Alpha is charging a lot of that.
The question is basically the unfairness of basically the low property rates, especially the timber industry, and what I can do about that. Let me be honest, I really don't think there's a lot we can do in the first 4 years. Those entrenched interests are not going to change dramatically enough that we're ever going to get to the point of being able to reverse that. It's also going to require ultimately constitutional changes as well to our 1901 Constitution. But I think that here's the good news. And I don't want to lie to you. I know that may not be the answer you want, but I don't want to tell you something I don't think is possible. But here's what I do think is the good news, is that as Alabama's, and really as the entire nation's revenue code has to be upgraded because of the digital online sales, Alabama being so dependent on sales taxes, we're eventually going to have to answer this question. And I think the answer is coming very soon in the next 5 to 10 years. Alabama's not going to be able to hide behind that tax structure forever. And I think that day is coming where what you talked about, we can have more tax fairness in Alabama. Because in Alabama today, the poor are slapped the heaviest when it comes to tax burden in Alabama. That's one of the reasons why I want to take state sales tax off of groceries in our state. And we can do that. That's an absolute by eliminating the federal deduction on state tax returns. So that's something we certainly want to do to begin easing that problem. Right here.
Yes, sir. So not only is this area of Alabama considered one of the fastest shrinking parts of the nation between here and Gadsden, there's also recently, it came out that it's one of the worst places to raise a child due to lack of resources, lack of programs, education, preschool, all of that. So as a mother of young children, what is your plan to, and it's not only this area, but of course Alabama has the reputation of not being the best of education. So what is your plan as regards to that?
Well, the question is, what are my plans to improve education in this community and communities across Alabama? That'd be a fair summary of that. Let me give you a more detailed answer, and I want to go ahead and apologize to all of you. It's the mayor in me, I like policy, and I actually think you should know details about the things that you talk about. So let me share a couple of things that I think are important to improving education. The first and most important thing we can do to improve education is expand Medicaid. And follow me on this. Alabama ranks 49th in prenatal care. Let that sink in. Of every state, we are the second worst when it comes to prenatal care. By the way, we're 50th in infant mortality. 50th. So, let's go back to the prenatal care. That means the chances for birth defects, brain defects, increase mightily in our children. And knowing the low prenatal care rates, knowing the overall low health care rates, knowing that in Alabama's 54 rural counties there's a dearth of pediatrics and other specialties, it is likely that children are coming in at kindergarten, the first time we really get to see them in a public education setting, and they have all these particular issues that have been compounded since the time they were conceived, are now manifested itself and haven't been addressed. And by the way, we expect teachers just to address that. Years of issues that have gone undiagnosed, that haven't been dealt with appropriately, could have been addressed early on. So number one, we've got to improve our health care, because our children are struggling behind children in other states because of our bad health care outcomes. Does that make sense? I hope it does. The second thing that we've got to do is that under our lottery proposal, we're going to have universal pre-K in Alabama. And I have seen firsthand, and I think that deserves a hand. I have seen firsthand in Tuscaloosa what universal pre-K can do. In the city of Tuscaloosa, the city council actually funds pre-K for academically at-risk students. And what we've discovered in the academically at-risk students, that if we can put them in a 4-year-old pre-K program, by the time they finish first grade, more than 80% are reading at grade level. That means they're going to graduate. Because if 80% of students that are reading on grade level, by 4th grade, they're going to graduate. We're going to get them there. We're going to get them across the finish line. But think about the reverse. The reverse is true. If you're not ready by the time you're 9 years old, chances are you're going to not succeed academically. And by the way, since the Great Recession, 90% of the jobs that have been created have either required a skill learned at a 2-year college or a 4-year degree. Advanced education is more important than any time in American history. And whether that education is skill-driven or academic-driven, you've got to have it to be ready. And this, to me, is what infuriates me as a mayor and as a parent. Our governor doesn't even want to debate this issue. Doesn't even want to talk about this issue. Don't want to tell you why it's important for your children, my children, the next generation of Alabamians. This is not a Republican or Democrat issue. This is not a right versus left issue. This is right versus wrong. And this is why we're on the right side of history. And this is why we will win on November 6th, issues just like this. So any other questions that you may have? I'm fired up. You got to be fired up now. We'll go in there.
I know they wanted to put all the money in a general fund and vote on how the money's spent. Would you create an education lottery?
The question is, will I create an education lottery? How will the dollars be spent? And by the way, on all these policy matters, please go to waltmaddox.com and click under issues, because it goes in a lot more detail. Our lottery proposal would put all $300 million that be generated after expenses into public education. It'd be a separate fund, not commingled with the ETF. It would go to 4 areas. $125 million will go to college scholarships. $90 million will go to universal pre-K. $60 million will go to equalized funding, and more so in our rural school systems in Alabama under the Promise program. That's a long story. I don't mind telling it, but I won't do it right now. And $25 million will go to the 100 or so schools in Alabama that are struggling. And in those 100 or so schools, we want to provide wraparound services for mental health, public health, and other social needs. Again, it gets back to that healthcare issue we talked about earlier. We've got to catch our children up, and we know in our schools that are struggling, it's more than just academic deficits, that we've got to move to catch up in the ballgame. Any other questions that you may have? We'll go here and there. We'll close out, and then I'll be around for a few more minutes afterwards.
I just had a question going back to what you talked about protecting schools from gun violence. While that's a great idea, unfortunately, all of us are at a greater risk of succumbing to gun violence in restaurants or at church or in parks or at festivals. So what other laws do you plan to implement and support that will keep us all safe?
Well, I feel very blessed. Our campaign's been endorsed by Mothers Demand Action. And so we're very proud of that endorsement. Here's a couple of things that we support. And by the way, just because you support common sense doesn't mean you're anti-Second Amendment. I think all of us are pro-Second Amendment, but I think all of us understand that there are certain common sense measures we need to take. Number one, semi-automatic weapons. You should be 21 or older before you're able to purchase a semi-automatic weapon. None of you can, if you're under 21, you will not be able to purchase a drink here. So why would we let you purchase a semi-automatic weapon? That's common sense. Number two, we've got to close the gun hole loopholes that exist at trade shows. The fact is that if you can get around any type of background check that's going to be validated by purchasing at a gun show, to me, we have to close that loophole, or else we're going to continue to see that's where rifles and assault rifles are going to be purchased and used for people who want to get around that loophole. So those two things are something that I would like to see the legislature do immediately. I think that'll go a long way. Here's the last thing that I want to see done. Right now, and I know this from law enforcement, there is a huge gap between ALEA and mental health in this state. And information is not flowing from one to the other. Let me give you a personal experience, though, in Tuscaloosa. And we had to deal with this in April of last year. We were notified by a physician that there was a mental health consumer that was a threat to himself and possibly others, including school children. So once TPD became aware of this, we certainly escalated our security around our schools. But I was really caught by surprise by how, number one, information didn't flow from one place to another. So without that position of direct notification, I'm not certain we might have never known about this potential problem. Number two is that, do you realize that right now in Alabama, if you have an individual who has been diagnosed with this issue, that we can do nothing to stop that person from going to buy a gun. There was legislation that was sponsored by Marika Coleman, and it had some bipartisan support that would give the families or the local law enforcement the ability to have a restraining order against purchases of firearms if you were diagnosed this way. Now, doesn't that seem to make sense? That if you've been seen as a harm to yourself or others, that you shouldn't be able to go purchase a weapon. Just a temporary, a TRO, during that time. Well, that's something too that I want to explore as well, so that we give everyone an opportunity to get that gap caught up. Because I do believe mental health is a role in this, and we've got to be more proactive and aggressive. So those are the things that I would like to see. Thank you. I think we have one last question right here.
So what are your thoughts on a livable wage?
Our proposal is to move the minimum wage to $15 an hour and then tie it to a CPI. That has been our proposal. The reason why that we would like to tie it to a consumer price index is so that we do not get into this legislative battle year after year. And for small businesses, we want to incentivize this by encouraging tax cuts and phase-ins on this issue. Because it's going to be the small businesses that are going to have to adjust and adapt more so than your larger corporations. And we certainly want to protect our small businesses because the new economy that's growing out there, it's very mom and pop, you might say, very entrepreneurial, and we want to make certain that we continue to grow that in Alabama. Before I sit down, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank each and every one of you for coming out. I know we've got a group over here as well. We need your help. Now the good news, we're out of yard signs. That's the good news. We've got a huge order coming in. If you would like a yard sign, please go to waltmaddox.com and let us know. Last month, other news, we equaled Governor Ivey in fundraising.
Yes.
How about that? Governor Ivey did it the old-fashioned Montgomery way. The old-fashioned Montgomery way is call your special interest and get them to donate large sums of money. They did that for her. She had 136 donations. But we did it the real old-fashioned way. We had 1,203 donations come into our campaign. I like our way better because those 1,203 people are going to vote Walt Maddox on election day as well.